Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danni and today we're gonna do some March Madness, but with books. I myself am not a big sports watcher. I enjoy, a game or two, but I am not someone who does anything with the brackets for March Madness. But I always find it intriguing when my friends and family talk about the various teams and who they think is going to win. Most of the time they get it wrong. But I thought it would be kind of fun to do that same idea, but with my favorite books for the past 3 years. Now, I did not want to do a bracket for 26 books, and so I did cut it down to 16. So this does not cover all of my favorite books that are featured in my best of videos that I've done the last 3 years that I've been on booktube. I'll link all of those videos down below if you guys want the entire list. I did a random number generator because I'm a nerd and I like random numbers to select 16 out of the 26 books that I had originally listed. And I also used a random number generator to figure out which ones would be heading off against one another. And we're just going to figure out of the 16 books that were selected, which one is my best book for the past 3 years. So I am going to put up a graphic that has all of the books in it and all of the various pairings that I have so you guys can see the madness that is going to ensue in this video. I will go through each of the pairings and I will kind of zoom in so you guys can just see that individual bracket. The first round will be the one that lasts the longest because I will explain why these books are my favorite books, give you a little bit of a brief synopsis, what you can expect out of the storyline. And then once we get to the second round, I'm not going to do any explaining because at that point I will have already talked to you guys about the books. So our first pairing is actually two recent books. So this is Thornhedge and City of Blades. And oh my goodness, these are so different. This is a crazy pairing and I'm gonna have to think. So I will do that as I'm explaining what these two books are to you guys. So if you haven't heard of City of Blades, it is the second book in the Divine Cities series by Robert Jackson Bennett. And I recently have just been diving into Robert Jackson Bennett's works because I've really enjoyed the Founders trilogy and the Tainted Cup. And so this was kind of in addition to that. This is also a Battle of the Booktubers book, but this is the second book, so I won't explain exactly the plot of this. The plot of The City of Stairs, which is the first book in the series, is you are following a city of fallen gods. So all of the divinities in this city are dead. This is the city of Bulakov, I believe is what it was called. And there, at the very beginning of the storyline, an ambassador from a neighboring nation has been murdered, and they are sending an emissary in to investigate the murder. The history behind Bulakov is they once, when their divinities were alive, were a great nation, were a power, and they ruled all of the countries around them. But since the divinities have perished, the other countries have moved in, conquered Bulakov, and they really have lost agency over everything. And so there's definitely some animosity going on. There's a lot of politics in this series, and the emissary that comes in, you actually find out that she is more than she seems. She is essentially a spy. For what? I'm not going to tell you. And her backstory has a little bit of a history as well. But learning about the divinities, what they controlled, why it was so devastating when they died, and some mystery surrounding this murder. Robert Jackson Bennett does fantasy mystery really well. So if you are looking for a mystery book that has fantasy elements, I think this is an author you should check out. Thornhedge, on a completely different note, is a story. It's a Sleeping Beauty retelling with a dark twist. So you have a character whose name is Toadling, who I dearly love, has been tasked with watching this tower and preventing anyone from entering the tower, because if somebody enters the tower, something bad will happen. You don't know what, and you get to see her stand guard for centuries. You learn a little bit about her past, and then you also get to learn about how she keeps people away. There is a soldier that comes along and is trying to get into the tower, and you get to see their interactions. It's just a really sweet tale that does have a little bit of a darkness to the original, but I absolutely love learning about Toadling and where she came from. There are some elements of her childhood that I just found really fascinating, and I hope that T. Kingfisher will eventually come back to this character. I'm not sure because this is a novella and it's not in a series, so we'll see, but I absolutely loved it. So, oh no. What this would really come down to would be what I want in the moment. Both of these are excellent books. Both of them are 5 stars. Oh, I think I have to, I think I have to put City of Blades. Oh, even though it pains me, because I do think that it's just so fascinating, and I loved the god that they focused on in City of Blades. So yeah, that's what I'm gonna push forward. So that's my first bracket. City of Blades moves on to the next round. Okay, moving on to the next bracket, which I'm not super stoked about. This bracket features the Will of the Many and Ninth Reign. Okay, to summarize a little bit, the Will of the Many, you are following, it's a very, very political fantasy story, and you're following our main character who is an orphan of war, and you find out he's hiding from his past because he happens to have a very famous, is not the right word, but he has a very important family, and you learn about all of that throughout the story, why he's hiding, and he really has just tried to stay out of the limelight. He doesn't want anyone to pay attention to who he is. He just wants to live in this world and not be bothered. Well, they have a society where I think it's when they turn 18, all of the civilians in this society have to submit their will to the government. And that actually gives anyone in the hierarchy, which is why the series is called Hierarchy, anyone above you can have access to your will. And so the higher you are in the hierarchy, the more people below you have access to more will, which gives you more power. And he doesn't want to submit, essentially, and so he's been avoiding it. This does have a magical school-esque nature that he does learn about. There is someone, he essentially does get noticed by someone because he has gotten into the fighting rings as an orphan, as something to do, and someone notices him and recruits him for something in the government, which is not necessarily what he wants, but it does give him a chance to gain power in a system that he could potentially ruin eventually. Ninth Reign is a world that is on the cusp of collapse. There are some signs that are happening that definitely show things are coming that are bad. And they know this because of history, but they don't know how to fight it. They don't have any of their historical things written down. They usually have relied upon I can't remember who they're called, but there's a race of individuals who are kind of like elves that are almost immortal. And so they've lived and they used to hold the histories and figure out, how to save the world from these events that are coming. However, humanity and this race have had a falling out for various reasons that you learn throughout the storyline. And they also, that race that is immortal, has had an illness that has swept through their race and killed a lot of them. So they are a dying race, and the history is dying with them. In this book, you follow 3 main characters. You follow one of the elven people. They're not elves, but that's what I'm going to call them because I can't remember what they're called. You follow a fell witch who is, at the very beginning of the story, in prison because people are so terrified of her powers. She can essentially use people's life force to make flame. And then you follow a scientist who is studying all of these things, signs that are happening in the world. And these 3 have to come together to figure out how are they going to save the world? And I just thought it was really fun. It's definitely a story I haven't read before. I love the I love the character development and the kind of found family-ness. It's not super sweet, it's not cozy, but I do, every time I think back to this, it just feels nostalgic to me. I really enjoy these characters and their path through all of these really crazy things that happen in their world. Oh, the crazy thing is I think Ninth Reign was my third favorite book in 2022, and The Will of the Many was my top book in 2025, or 2023? 2023. Yeah, 2023. Sorry, it's been a minute. But I feel like with time, I think on the Ninth Reign more than I do The Will of the Many. And so I think that's the one I'm going to move forward. Once again, both of these are 5 stars. I love both of them, but yeah, I think it's going to have to be in the Ninth Reign for me. Next is such a unique pairing, but I think it's also a really good pairing because both of these do have horror elements. The first one is Mary. The second one is Strange Beasts. So we have a book from last year and a book from 2023. And I think I already know what my answer is on this one, but we'll see if my mind changes as I'm explaining what these 2 books are. With Mary, Mary is the first Nat Cassidy that I ever read. It is a horror novel featuring an elderly protagonist who is essentially seeing people die in front of her eyes. Every time she looks at women, she sees them age and decay in front of her, including herself. If she looks in a mirror, this is what she sees. She also starts dreaming of these women who have been murdered. And so she thinks that something is wrong with her. She goes to the doctor, and essentially everyone just keeps telling her that it's menopause and that she needs to like slow her roll a little bit. But she finds out that the women who she sees in these dreams that have been murdered are actually dead. And so she starts having thoughts of like, am I irresponsible? What's going on? Like, why am I having these dreams? And she decides to go back to her hometown. And I'm not going to tell you any more than that. It's really creepy, but it's also an exploration of aging and the view of society on aging in general, the view of women on themselves aging. And then also it has some social commentary in it on the medical field and whether or not women are listened to when they have issues like this. And so I absolutely love this story. I will continue to read everything that Nat Cassidy puts out because I have enjoyed the 2 books that I've read by him so far, and I really, really like how he writes women. I think that it's very intentional. I think he has a lot of sympathy writers, I think is what they call them, people who are on his team that are telling him what's realistic, what's not realistic, what things he should harp on, what things he shouldn't harp on. And he also, I think for Nestlings and Mary, which are the 2 Nat Cassidys that I've read, he has dedicated them to women in his life. And so he does use personal experiences as well in his stories, which I've really enjoyed. The second book in this is Strange Beasts, which is a Holmesian mystery, but it's also a fantasy. And the Holmesian characters, Holmes and Watson, are actually 2 women. You have the daughter of Moriarty and Samantha Harker, who is tied to the events surrounding Dracula. And these 2 women work in a research institute that researches monsters because the land that they are in is full of monsters, gothic monsters specifically. Samantha is more of the book smart one. She definitely enjoys the research aspect, whereas Moriarty is more into the solving of crimes. Both of them are important, but both also get sent off to solve these gruesome murders that are happening in Paris. And I just thought it was so fun. Seeing all the monsters, seeing these 2 women interact together, their struggles with working together, but also working in a field that is dominated by men. And I loved it. I thought it was so fun. The mystery is really intriguing, definitely gruesome, but I loved how it all wrapped up together. And I hope to see these 2 in stories together in the future as well. We'll see if that happens. So as far as my person or my books who are going to be moving forward, I'm gonna choose Strange Beasts. I absolutely love Mary, and it does have a special place in my heart because I do like an elderly protagonist and I love all of the themes involved, but I just had so much fun with Strange Beasts, so that's why that one's gonna move forward. Next, we have Surface Model and Tropic of Serpents. Oh goodness. These are two cozy books, cozy in different ways, but Surface Model is a sci-fi by Adrian Tchaikovsky that absolutely took me by storm last year. It's about a robot valet whose name is Charles, in the beginning anyway, his name is Charles, and he thinks that he's murdered his master, and he wants to find a purpose. He wants to find a job somewhere else, and so he goes and he goes out into the world and is trying to figure out something that he can do, something that he is purposeful in. And even though because he's a robot, he's very clinical, I think that his personality grows on you as the story goes, and his character is just so endearing, how he sees the world and seeing it through his eyes, but knowing what we know as humans. Some of the things he sees are just devastating, and he just takes them at face value. And I don't know, I really liked that dynamic. There was also the commentary on how the world ended up the way that it did, which I'm not going to give you too much about that, throughout the story. And then also him working alongside someone else in the story, learning from them and growing. I really liked it. It was amazing. It's such a fun story, and I'm glad that I read it. The Tropic of Serpents is book 2 in the Lady Trent series, and so I'm not going to give you too much about the plot. If you haven't heard me talk about Lady Trent, I know I talk about it a lot. It is a series where you are following a female scientist, and it's set in a time when women are not really supposed to have hard jobs. So she's really not supposed to be studying dragons, but she decides at a young age that that's what she wants to do, and she figures out a way to do it. And each book in the series features a different adventure with her, studying the different dragons and the different cultures that the dragons live in. It's just such a cozy, wholesome read with also some science behind it. She's got some fire in her veins as well, isn't willing to allow people to tell her that she can't do something because of her gender. And I absolutely love the series. I'm sad that I'm done with it. I might have to reread it soon just so I can be back with Lady Trent again. This decision is hard because I love both of these books. Oh man. I think I'm gonna have to go with Surface Model. And the reason I say that is because it is the more unique story to me at this stage in my reading journey. I have not read a lot of books like Surface Model. I'm just starting to kind of dabble with that like cozy sci-fi, because even the books that I have read, Murderbot and the Mosscap, The Monk and the Tea series by Becky Chambers, which I would consider that one cozy. I wouldn't consider Murderbot cozy, but both of them have robots that are learning about themselves and have a story of their own. I think Surface Model, though, took it a step further and did something that I haven't seen before with robots as far as how he views the world and, I don't know, the progression of the events in the storyline. So I'm going to say that one, even though it kind of hurts my heart to leave Serpents behind, but I'm going to have to. Okay, we're on to the other side of the bracket now, and this is The Crown Tower versus The Liar's Knot, which are two series that I've absolutely loved, and my random number generator is being mean. The Crown Tower is the first book in the Rhaenyra Chronicles series, which is the origin story of Royce and Hadrian from Rhaenyra Revelations. I absolutely love these two men, the brotherhood behind them, and them learning. So because this is their origin story, they hate each other at the beginning of this book, and you get to see them grow in trust and realizing that they're better together than they are separate. It's absolutely fantastic. They are essentially contract workers. I don't even want to call them thieves. So the first book in the Rhaegar Revelations is the theft of swords, and they are actually contracted out to steal something. Whereas in the Crown Tower, that's not what they're doing, but they are hired out for a job that they have to do together, and they are forced to do together for circumstances I'm not going to discuss. But really the heart of the story is the relationship between the two men, the fact that they are rough and gruff and they hate each other in the beginning, and you get to see why that changes throughout this storyline. Oh, it's just, I mean, character development at its finest. It's amazing. The second book in this is The Liar's Knot, which is the second book in the Rose and Rook series, which is about a con artist who comes into a Venetian style fantasy setting, and she is trying to convince a noble family that she is part of their family, that she's like a long lost relative, and get them to accept her onto their family ledgers, because that will allow her to have access to their money, and then she wants to cut and run, essentially. Well, you learn that this family is destitute and they're having some trouble. There's a ton going on in this world. You have two really intricate magic systems that you learn, a vast cast of characters that just grows on you throughout the series. There is a vigilante in the city that has been trying to help the underprivileged people because they have definitely been taken advantage of by the noble class that lives in the city. And there's also an underbelly that we are not aware of that our main character, the con artist, happens to be a part of. And so she definitely is living a double life. You get to see that. Oh, the series is just so good. And I do think the second book in the series is my favorite. This is a hard decision. Oh man, I think I'm gonna have to go with The Liar's Knot. That's what my heart is. My heart is calling me to the Liar's Knot. So I think that's what I'm gonna do. And that's just like a gut reaction. I absolutely love both of these. They have amazing character development. I do think that as far as if you're interested in both series, Crown Tower is definitely more palatable. It's easier to read. The Liar's Knot, the Rook and the Rose series, it's very complex fantasy. It's very dense. There's a glossary in the back. I think there's a glossary in Rhaegar Revelations as well, but not Rhaegar Chronicles. So yeah, I think I'm gonna have to go with The Liar's Knot. Just go with my heart. The next pairing is the first one that I think is kind of weird. These books are very different, and I do automatically know who's going to move forward, but the two books are The September House and The Engines of Empire, which I've loved both of these. Both of these were also 5 stars. The September House is a horror novel featuring an elderly protagonist. She and her husband have moved into their dream Victorian home and realize very quickly that it is haunted. And every September, things get worse throughout the month. The walls bleed, ghosts walk the house. Although some of that happens throughout the year as well, it just gets worse in September. And her daughter is coming to visit, and she is trying to figure out how to prevent her daughter from realizing that they're living in a haunted home. She doesn't want to leave because this is her dream home. She's refusing that a haunting is going to prevent her from having her dream. And it's a really interesting story. I like the interaction with ghosts and the lore behind the September House that you learn throughout the book. It was a really fun October read, and I meant to reread it this year and I just didn't. The second book, The Engines of Empire, is a political fantasy that features 5 members of a noble family, and they are spread out amongst this very vast fantasy kingdom that is at war or on the precipice of war. And you get to see all of the dynamics that happen in this kingdom. What's going on one side of the country is completely separate from what's going on in the main portion of the country. You also get to know their family dynamics, how they interact with one another, what their history is. And there's a larger plot at play. I just don't know how much I can tell you because I went in blind, and I absolutely love this series. I'm excited because I think the third one is coming out this year, if not this year, early next year. And I can't wait to see how the author is going to wrap everything up, because The types of magics that are at play are all separate depending on what part of the kingdom you're in. There's one character in the first book that I really think goes through a journey that I really enjoyed, trying to figure out what the magic system was and what the world, like how the world interacts with it. So yeah, it's definitely a fun series. And that is the one I'm moving forward. Engines of Empire is one that definitely took me by surprise. Both of these really did. The September House I didn't expect to love as much as I did. But I went into Engines of Empire because it's a chonky boy. And I was thinking that it was just going to be like another typical fantasy book because it sounds kind of generic, like when I give you the synopsis. But I just really loved the characters in the kingdom. I thought it was very fun. It's very fast-paced for such a chonky book. Even though the kingdom does have its own complexities, I just really liked it. So that's going to be my choice to move forward. The next pairing I think is fitting. I think that they kind of go along with one another, but I do already know who's going to win. The first book in this pairing is The Captain's Fury, which is the fourth book? The third or the fourth book in the Furies of Calderon. The Codex Alera series is what the series name is. And I have just fallen head over heels for the characters in this series. The amount of dedication Jim Butcher puts into the relationships within this series is absolutely phenomenal. The magic system is really interesting if you like elemental magic. That's essentially what is going on in this. But it is a nation that is at war currently with people that are infiltrating their own nation, but they also have wars that have happened in the past. They are dealing with just society clashing and cultures clashing from that as well. Your main character is Tavi, who is originally at the very, very beginning of the story, not in Captain's Fury at all, but at the very beginning of the story, he is a shepherd, and he is different from everyone else in his city because he doesn't have powers over Furies, which are the elemental natures throughout this storyline. And so the entire series, he is one of our main characters. It follows multiple people, but he's kind of the main center point. And seeing him grow up without these powers and how that impacted him as a person, as him as a friend, and as other things that I won't mention, I really like his character development and this group of found family around him that grows as the story arc continues in further books. It's just fantastic to see the kingdom dynamics. This also has a lot of politics in it. The kingdom dynamics are really fun to see unfurl and expand. It's a really fun series, and the characters make all the difference. The pairing is with Empire of Silence, which is another epic story, which is why I think that these do kind of go together, even though this is an epic sci-fi. It's an epic sci-fi space opera that was inspired by The Name of the Wind. And you can definitely see the little pieces of inspiration that this author got from Patrick Rothfuss. But you are following Hadrian Marlowe, who is an infamous figure in the universe for various reasons that you learn throughout the story, and you are listening to him tell his own story. You know that he is considered the Sun Eater. That's why it's called the Sun Eater series. He has destroyed suns and eradicated alien species. And he is seen as both a hero and a villain of the story. And you start out with him being a privileged noble who has something happen where he ends up not being so privileged anymore, having that privilege taken away, and he has to figure out what to do with it. And I don't know how much more I want to tell you. There is an alien civilization involved that definitely are not friends to humans, and he wants to learn about them as a young boy. That learning, that education that he has ends up coming into play later on when he does get the opportunities to visit and have interactions with these aliens. I don't know how much to give you, but it's so vast in scope. So I'm not doing it justice with how I'm describing it, but it was very fun. I do like the narrative style of someone telling their own story, because you never quite know if they're being a reliable narrator, if they're amping themselves up a little bit. I do also like the breaking of the fourth wall with him talking about something that's foreboding or something that he should have noticed. That is something I do enjoy in stories. Unfortunately, though, I am going to move Captain's Fury forward. The characters in this series, I think, are done better than the characters in Empire of Silence, and my heart is leading me today. So that is why Captain's Fury is going to be moving forward. Okay, last bracket. The last one that's going to take a little bit. Oh, and I do think it's one of the harder ones. So my first book is The Book of Doors. The second is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries. Oh boy, guys. I love both of these. So The Book of Doors, if you haven't heard me talk about it, is about a main character whose name is Cassie, and she works at a bookstore, and an elderly patron comes in every day and has dinner at their store while she closes. And one day she's having a discussion with him about traveling the world and the fact that she kind of feels stuck. She hasn't traveled a lot because of various circumstances in her life that you do learn throughout the story. And she leaves to go and pack up the bookstore while he finishes up his food. And she comes back and he has passed away in the bookstore. And he has left her The Book of Doors, which is a book that allows you to travel anywhere in the world just by walking through a door. And you get to see her travel and explore. But there is a caveat to this book, because it does open up the door, pun intended, of a nefarious world that she didn't realize existed, and she puts herself in danger. And this book just is such a vibey book. It's very slow paced. I do think that there are portions of it that are quicker paced, and I have heard people talk about how they thought the pacing was very like up and down. I found it to be very plodding, with the exception of like a couple of sections were quicker paced, but I just loved every minute of it. It has a grief storyline, a subplot that I thought was very sweet, and I thought it was very well done. So it definitely stole my heart last year. Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Faeries is just a story. I think it was my gateway book into cozy fantasy, to be honest, even though I don't think that it is severely cozy. I think that it is like just on the cusp of being fully deemed cozy, like maybe cozy academia, if that makes sense. If you haven't heard of Emily Wilde's, Emily is a studier of fairies, and she lives in a world that has a vast variety of fairies. And she decides that as an academic, she is going to put together an encyclopedia of all of the different fae, because they can be very dangerous for humans. And so she wants to essentially put together a guide for people to make sure that people are aware of what fae live where, what they do, things to avoid, things not to avoid, things like that. And she goes off to study this group of fae that is not well known, and gets herself into a bit of trouble. You also have her colleague who travels along with her. She does not realize that he is going to be there, and he comes in to study along with her, and they are very different personalities. She is very much an academic. She does not want a personal life, I guess. She is not somebody who wants a lot of friends. She's not very charismatic. Whereas Wendell, her colleague, is. He's kind of the life of the party. And so they're very different. You get to see how they interact together. And it's just such a cute story. And it's expanded in books too. I haven't read the third book yet, but I'm very excited about it. Oh, I love these books for different reasons. Which one do I want to push forward? I think this might be the hardest one to make a decision for, because all the rest of them, even though they were hard, I did kind of like immediately make a decision. In this one, I've just been sitting here in front of my camera trying to figure out what I'm doing. Oh man. I think I'm I think I'm gonna go with Emily Wilde's. Oh, that hurts. I don't know. Oh, but I think I'm gonna go for Emily Wilde. So that's gonna be my decision. It was really just a gut decision, I guess. I think I've lived with it longer. I think it's a little unfair to compare the two because Emily Wilde is a series and I have read further into the series and gotten to know the characters a little bit more. But I think that's what I'm going to go with. Oh, I don't... Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going to stick with it. Emily Wilde is the one who's going to move forward. Okay, moving on to the second round. So, I might be looking down at my graphic so I can kind of keep track of what we're doing, because now we're going to be going quicker. So the first one, maybe we won't be going quicker. The first one, the pairing is between City of Blades and The Ninth Reign. Oh goodness, two very different stories, but they are both like full out fantasy worlds. And both of them involve a mystery, even though City of Blades is more of a mystery than Ninth Reign. I think Ninth Reign is going to be my choice to move forward with that one. I don't know, that series has just lived with me forever. I really like the dynamic duo between, or the dynamic trio, I guess, between the characters. And so, yeah, I think that's going to be my choice there. The next one is Strange Beast versus Service Model. Very different vibes. Oh man, Service Model. I think that I really loved the view of Uncharles the robot. I think that he's absolutely fantastic, and yes, I can't get that book out of my head, so that's the one I'm going to move forward there. The next one is The Liar's Knot versus Engines of Empire. Oh no. Oh, I think I'm gonna have to move forward the Liar's Knot. That cast of characters is amazing. I mean, so is the Engines of Empire cast though, but I don't know. The found family vibes in The Liar's Knot, I think, is just, it's very, very well done. So I think that one's gonna move forward for me. Oh no. The next one, Captain's Fury and Emily Wilde. Okay. So very, very different vibes. Very much a book written by a man and then a book written by a woman. I love the character development. I think the character development in Captain's is better than the character development in Emily Wilde's. But I think, oh man. I think I'm gonna have to go with Emily Wilde's. Emily, even though I do think the character development, the overarching character development in Captain's Fury, because that series, I think it is the third book, and Emily Wilde's is the first book. So I do think it's a little bit unfair to compare the character development. We know also Captain's Fury, the Codex Alera series, those books are huge, and so there are more pages to develop the characters. But I think I like the story in Emily Wilde's better. So yeah, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So Emily Wilde moves on. Okay, next we have The Ninth Reign versus Service Model. I have to give it to Service Model, guys. That book is destroying the competition, but I love it, and I can't, it's so stuck in my head. So that is going to be the one that I move forward there. Next, we have The Liar's Knot compared to Emily Wilde's Encyclopaedia of Faeries. The Liar's Knot, guys. To go back to the character development piece of it, I think The Liar's Knot has better character development than Emily Wilde's. And I think that the found family elements are much stronger in The Liar's Knot than they are. It's a much larger series too, so it's probably not a fair comparison, but hey, they got head-to-head. The Liar's Knot was gonna win. And now I have to choose between Service Model and The Liar's Knot. How different. Service Model is not a large book, and The Liar's Knot is the second book in a very chunky fantasy series. Wow, this is crazy. Oh, I think, guys, I think I'm gonna go with The Liar's Knot. I think that's what I'm gonna do. Is that my choice? I think so. I think that's that's gonna be the book that wins this March Madness. That's crazy. I'm gonna have to go back to my video for 2023, I think is where The Liar's Knot was in, like what list it was in, and figure out where that was on my list. I do know that there are 10 books that were featured in my best of books from the last 3 years that were not on this, and so keep that in mind, that there are definitely some books that didn't even get a chance to be in the competition. If you guys would like to see those 10 books head to head and then see which one wins between The Liar's Knot and then the winner of that one, I guess I could do that if you guys are interested in seeing that, or I could just do that on the side and then maybe post a community post if you guys would just be curious to see if it changes. I think that this book, though, this series, if you guys haven't heard of the Rose and the Rook series, is just fantastic. And I know it's intimidating because of the size. I know that it can be a little dense and people get kind of annoyed and maybe feel a little isolated by how complex the magic systems are and the fantastical words that these authors, because this is an author duo, that they throw at you. But I just think it's so well done. And as I've said before, the found family elements in this, the character development, how you see them grow throughout the story, is just amazing. And I absolutely look back on this book in particular, has a scene in it with a kitten, if you know, you know, that I was giddy about for days after I read it, and I still remember that feeling. So I'm not mad about this one winning. I just am a little shocked that some of the other ones didn't make it further than they did. So yeah. Let me know in the comments down below what your best book of the last 3 years are, if you can narrow it down. And if you're not feeling chatty, leave me a little mask emoji for The Liar's Knot. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.